Well, hey everybody, welcome. This is HashiCorp Vault. Ask me anything. I'm Ned Bellavance. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. The goal for today, like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Maybe I should start with that. So, I have been working on a refresh of my HashiCorp Vault courses on Pluralsight for the last 3 months. God, was it? No, it's June. So it's been like 4 months that I started this journey. And during that time, I have redone basically all of my Vault content and packed my brain full of vaulty things. And so I thought I finished the last course like 2 days ago, or submitted the last of the clips like 2 days ago. And I thought to myself, maybe I should share this. Maybe I should share some of this knowledge and see if folks out there have any questions around HashiCorp Vault, something they've been struggling with. Oh, what's up, Marino? Thanks for joining. Marino might have questions about Vault. I don't know. 2 live streams in one day? That's right. That's how we roll. So I was just curious to see if people had questions around Vault in general. And I also want to talk a little bit about the various Vault certifications that exist, because there are 2 of them. One is much more challenging than the other. And I could take you through a little bit of the content and show off some examples. So that's my plan. If anybody at any point has questions, and I'll ask several times over the course of the stream, if you have questions, comments, or something that you're interested in when it comes to Vault, or if you just have general questions around like me or how I develop stuff for Pluralsight or other content modalities, shoot, go for it. I'm going to start by just talking about like Vault a little bit. And, okay, here we go. What are some primary use cases for Vault? Marino, great question. Good intro. All right, so HashiCorp Vault was created to help with the management of sensitive information, or secrets. I don't love the term secrets because it implies a specific type of information, but I think more broadly, Vault is there to help you manage your sensitive information. It does that in one of 3 ways. It can help you protect existing sensitive information by giving you a place to store that information. So you have existing API keys, passwords, you name it, PII, those kinds of things. You can store that information in Vault. And what Vault does is provide a secure location to store that information that is protected through an authentication and an authorization process. So you have to authenticate to Vault, and then you have to be authorized to access that information. And the information is stored in a highly secure manner. So that's like one way that Vault can help you manage secret data. It can manage existing secret information. The second way that Vault can help manage your secrets lifecycle is by dynamically generating secret information and then controlling how long it's valid for. So think of something like database credentials or cloud credentials. I want to be able to deploy things in Microsoft Azure, but I don't want to have static credentials that are just stored somewhere to use. Instead, Vault on my behalf can generate credentials in the appropriate subscription with the appropriate permissions in Azure, hand me those temporary credentials, and set them up in such a way that they're only valid for the next hour. Maybe not great for a person. That could be kind of annoying, but if you're thinking about automating your deployments to Azure and using Vault as a source for that service account, that makes a whole lot of sense. So we've got static secrets, we've got dynamic secrets that Vault is managing the lifecycle of completely. And then the third way that it can help is with encryption of information. So Vault has a couple different encryption services. It has a PKI service, so it can handle the issuance and management of certificates. SSH keys, it can handle the issuance and management of SSH keys. And it can also generate its own encryption keys and perform cryptographic operations for you, whether that's encryption and decryption, signing and verifying. It can do all of that. So really a lot of different use cases. That's a very broad question you asked, Marino. Thank you. Marina asked, and this is funny because I was just on a stream with Marino talking about LLMs, and he accidentally showed his API keys. Whoops. Would Vault be a good place to store your LLM API keys? Yeah, absolutely. Especially if they're static. That would be a great place to store them. And then the applications that are using it, or you yourself, when you're using it, you can grab that credential from Vault. You can use it for a certain period of time. And then next time you need to retrieve it, Vault will have it for you. Vault does this through secrets engines. So if you're just storing static secrets, you can use the key value secrets engine, and it just stores your static secrets. That's it. It doesn't control their life cycle, really. You can have multiple versions of a secret, so you can have older values stored and then replace them with newer values, but have a historical record of previous values. If your LLM service has a plugin for dynamic secrets, then Vault could actually provision API keys on your behalf, or whatever that given LLM is. I don't know what actual plugins they have, so maybe that's a question. Let's find out. Let me pull up my screen and let's go into let's look for Vault plugins. Vault plugins. I should probably say HashiCorp Vault plugins, but we got there anyway. So Vault has a bunch of built-in plugins, and then it also has community and enterprise plugins. So let's see if they say current plugins here, and we've got AWS. These are all the built-in ones. So let's look at the partner ones, see if any of these are under the category of AI. Redis, Keyfactor, Jenkins, Exascale. No, I don't see any of these that are under that, but we could do like AI. No, so hey, anybody can write a plugin and submit it as a community plugin. So if you want to try to write a plugin that will allow you to automatically generate API keys for OpenAI or something similar, the plugin software, the plugin programming language is Go, and there's a repository that has like a software development kit for HashiCorp Vault, so you could just try to develop your own plugins if you wanted to. What else we got? How would I handle rotation of? Well, I kind of touched on this. If you're just storing static secrets in the key value store, then it's up to you to manage the rotation of them. So you can write new versions of the key. If you're using a dynamic plugin, then that can manage the life cycle of those secrets for you. And you get to set things like how long is a given key going to be valid for that gets generated by Vault. So you can say, I want it to be valid for an hour, a day, a week, whatever you want. And when that time period expires, Vault will go and remove that key from whatever the target system is, or that credential. So it will revoke that credential on the target system, so it's no longer valid. So that is how it manages that life cycle of secrets. So good questions. Thank you, Marino. And like I said, if you're just signed on, just joined, I am answering questions about HashiCorp Vault. Anything's game. If I don't have any questions, then I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2 certifications and some topics that I think are interesting in Vault, and maybe even do a demo. So if you want to see a demonstration of something in Vault, let me know. All right. So I covered Marino's questions. Thank you. Let me pull my screen back up and talk a little bit about the certifications that exist for Vault, because this is the primary thing that I've been working on. The genesis behind doing this stream was I've been working on redoing my Pluralsight courses to focus on the newest version of the Vault Associate exam, which is now version 003. That got updated beginning of this year, early last year, somewhere around that time. It was a big update because they moved to new versions of Vault being tested against and replaced some of the older content. So I had to refresh all my courses. And since I had to redo all the courses, my brain is stuffed with all of this knowledge, and I figured I would share that knowledge. So the layout of the exam in general for Vault Associate, there are 9 objectives that they want to test you on. The actual exam format it's only an hour-long exam, and it's all multiple choice. So in terms of difficulty, this doesn't require you to be an expert in Vault and being able to run complicated commands at the CLI or anything like that. Instead, it's really just trying to test your base knowledge of Vault. And then there's another level of exam that's actually a practical exam with lab-based exercises, which I can talk about later if that's of interest to anyone. But like I said, there's 9 objectives that they want to cover. And I think they're broken up pretty logically. So if anybody's curious about a specific objective, I can go in more detail about that objective. But at a very high level, it starts with authentication methods. So in Vault, authentication methods are different methods for you to prove your identity to Vault. Vault wants to know, who are you? Why should I trust you? And so what you're doing when you set up an authentication method is you're setting up essentially a trust relationship between the Vault server and some identity provider. That could be Kubernetes is one of the identity providers. You could also set it up between Vault and LDAP or Active Directory, or you could do one of the clouds like Azure or Entra ID now, or AWS IAM. So there's a ton of different. And Okta is another one. So if you have sort of like a identity as a service through Okta, you can basically hook Vault into any of those and say, I trust that this identity provider is a good one. And if something wants to authenticate using that method, that's fine. So that's the authentication piece, proving you are who you say you are through usually an external identity provider, though there's a couple internal ones in case you don't have access to an external one. Once you're authenticated, the next thing is to authorize yourself, right? So you have auth N and auth Z. We authenticated. Now we need to authorize ourselves. And that's the second objective in the exam is, okay, you've proved you are who you are. Now, what permissions should you have on Vault? And permissions in Vault are granted through policies, access control policies, or ACL policies, they sometimes call them. And so these policies use HashiCorp configuration language to express the policy, and it's all path-based. Everything in Vault goes back to the API that it presents. There is a UI and there's a CLI that you can use to interact with Vault, but everything goes to the API. And so everything is path-based in Vault. So when you're creating your policies, you're granting access on a particular path, and you express what path you want to grant access to and what capabilities you want to grant on that path. And that gets wrapped up in a policy that gets associated with your identity. So when I when I authenticate to Vault, I will be placed in a particular group or just authenticated as an individual, and I'll be assigned a policy. And that policy determines what I can do within the context of Vault. And I can have multiple policies assigned to me. I'm not just limited to one. And the rights that I get are the collection of all of those policies put together. By default, I have no access. So policies are about granting access, not denying access necessarily. It's kind of like a firewall where the last rule in a firewall is deny all. Well, the last rule in the policy is to deny it. So if it's not explicitly allowed by one of the policies you don't have access to do it. So at this point, I've signed into Vault and I've received my permissions through access policies. What's up next? What do I get back? I get back a token. And the token, you can think of this like an API token. The token holds your identity and your policies, and it's how you prove to Vault that you have successfully authenticated and have policies associated with you. So all of your interactions with Vault beyond the initial authentication process will have you sending that token as part of the request. If you're working directly with the API, it's up to you to include the token. But if you're using the CLI or the UI, then you can just save the token and then it'll just use that token on each subsequent request. Like any good API token, it is time bound, so it will expire after a certain amount of time. You can request to renew that token, and Vault will allow you to do that up to a maximum TTL. But once you hit that maximum, you can't extend that token's lifetime beyond a certain amount of time. And when a token expires, you lose access to Vault. And if you've provisioned any dynamic secrets with your token, those dynamic secrets are also revoked. And that's done through leases, which is the fourth objective. So we talked about, I authenticate with authentication methods in objective 1. I get my access rights through policies in objective 2. I receive back a Vault token, which is covered by objective 3. And then the token and any secrets I generate using that token have a lifetime associated with them, and that's tracked through a lease. So tokens and dynamic secrets have leases, and those leases always have a time to live. And when those leases expire, the token or the dynamic secret are revoked. So that's the point of leases. That's a pretty short objective. You don't have to know a ton about that one. All right. Now, the whole point of working with Vault is to work with secrets engines, because that's where we have all these plugins for Vault that allow you to do things like store secrets. Ooh. Oh, thank you for providing that, LinkedIn user who is hidden. What is this link? I'm curious about this. Vault secrets auto rotation. Yep, there is some auto rotation, but not for static secrets. So secrets engines, I kind of alluded to this before. There's basically 3 categories of secrets engines. There's static secrets engines that just store information that you give to Vault to store in a secure location. So this is stuff that's generated externally from Vault, and you're just loading it into Vault for secure storage. There's dynamic secrets engines where Vault actually generates the secret information for you and manages its life cycle, how long it's valid for. And that's something that you can do with databases. So you can set it up to connect to various database servers and generate credentials dynamically. So think of an application that needs access to a database. Typically, you would just give it credentials to that database, and those would be long-lived credentials, and maybe they go in a configuration file or something. If someone gets a hold of those credentials, they can just use them. Maybe you don't want to do that. So you could also have the application dynamically, when it spins up, request for database credentials from Vault and authenticate through its machine identity. Vault will give it database credentials, which are valid for a certain amount of time. And when they expire, the application can request a new fresh set of credentials, which means if anybody gets access to those credentials, if they leak in some way, they'll expire within a certain amount of time, or you can revoke them if you know something happened. So you don't have these long-lived static credentials hanging. That's the idea behind the dynamic secrets engines. And then there's encryption as a service, which is partially handled through the Transit Secrets engine, but is also handled by things like the PKI and SSH engines that will allow you to generate SSH keys or generate certificates. If you've ever managed an environment where you have Active Directory certificate services available, and which is kind of a cool thing that Active Directory has, people can sort of self-service provision certificates and automatically renew those certs. The PKI engine for Vault can do the same thing for non-Active Directory stuff. And it also supports the ACME protocol, which stands for something that I can't remember off the top of my head. But essentially, it allows you to automate the provisioning and renewal of certificates for your web servers or whatever other services need certificates, which is nice. I like that. So those are the 3 different kinds of secrets engines. And so this objective is in part really understanding what these various engines are, what their purpose is, and how to enable them. Because out of the box, it's not enabled. Out of the box, Vault has no secrets engines enabled. So as the operator of Vault, it's up to you to mount a secrets engine and configure it appropriately. Ooh. Hello, empty mug. Oh, that's sad that your mug is empty. Someone should put something in your mug. I like coffee. Coffee's good. So that is that objective. Objective 6 is to dig a little bit more into encryption as a service to just better understand the transit secrets engine. Not going to get too deep into that right now, but it's something interesting. Have I heard of Inficial? I have not. If that's a spam thing, then I'm not going to engage with it. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what Vault can do through its authentication methods, its policies, the tokens, and the secrets engines. They also want you to understand a bit about Vault's architecture, how it does what it does, how it accomplishes these goals. And so that's covered through Vault architecture fundamentals, deployment architecture. So the 2 of these kind of work together in terms of objectives. The first one is just understanding basically how does Vault actually secure the data that's held inside of it, and it does it through a series of encryption keys. And I can go into like way too much detail about these encryption keys. Maybe I can touch on that if anybody wants me to. The next objective is Vault deployment architecture. Ooh, what's this? It's an open source equivalent to Vault, open source and seems to be equivalent to Vault, and it's pronounced Inphysical. No, I am not aware of that solution. I'm evaluating it because Vault prices are skyrocketing. That's a good point. For folks that don't follow HashiCorp religiously, they might not be aware of the various licensing models. And what's kind of funny is that's actually not covered by any of the objectives. So maybe I want to touch on that a little bit. So Vault has a few different editions. Well, really 3. It has the community edition, which we used to say the open source edition, but for those who followed along, you probably know that HashiCorp moved from an open source GPL license, I believe, to instead it wasn't GPL. Fact check me on that, but they've moved to a BSL style license, business source license, which means that the code is still source available. And in terms of the license, as long as you're not using Vault to create a Vault competitor or Vault as a service competitor, then you can use it for whatever you want. There's no restrictions beyond that. But if you're, say, trying to stand up a cloud service that runs Vault on the back end to do secrets as a service, then that's a competitor to their paid product. And so that would be a violation of the BSL. You'd have to get a license from Vault, from HashiCorp to do that particular solution. But otherwise, if you're using it for anything else, there's no real restrictions. There were some specific cases where there were service providers doing exactly that, running Vault and offering secrets as a service without licensing that. And that was not great. So, HashiCorp wasn't real happy about that. And I get it. That's a much longer conversation we don't need to have right now. Empty Mug, is it the same for Terraform Enterprise? Yeah, it's basically the same for Terraform. They did the same thing. So they moved from an open source license to the BSL for Vault. Terraform, Console, Nomad, a few others that I'm not thinking of right now. Terraform and Vault were the big ones, right? So there's the free version of Vault Community Edition that you can use, and it's got a lot of bells and whistles in it, but it's missing a few things, and we can talk about what those things are. Then there's the Vault Enterprise version where you host Vault yourself, but you get access to those additional enterprise-y kind of features. And then the third option is HashiCorp Cloud Platform Vault, or HCP Vault, also called Vault Dedicated. And that is Vault as a service offered by HashiCorp. So what that allows you to do is they will provision the Vault servers for you and run them either in Azure or AWS, and you can use a public endpoint, or you can peer those Vault servers that are running in a VPC or a VNet. You can peer them to one of your existing VPCs or VNets, or you can hook it to like a transit gateway, depending on what your architecture looks like in your cloud of choice. So those are your like three options when it comes to Vault. HCP Vault Dedicated and Vault Enterprise have the expanded enterprise features that Vault Community Edition does not. One of them is the ability to use an HSM. So maybe I can find the documentation for that. Hold on one moment. And I should share my screen again. Woo, there we go. Vault product documentation. Let me blow that up so people can actually read it. When you're looking through the documentation, anything that is flagged as ENT means it's an enterprise only option. And let's see. Vault Enterprise. So if you want to support an HSM, which is a hardware security module, then you do in fact need Vault Enterprise to do that. So if you do need HSM support, you don't have a choice. You kind of have to go with Vault Enterprise, which, I mean, if you have that requirement, if you need to be FIPS compliant and you require that HSM, then yeah, I guess you got to pony up for the enterprise licenses. Yeah, cheers, man. Cheers from Empty Mug. I have also heard that the Vault pricing has gone up a bit. I do not handle, well, I don't work for HashiCorp to begin with. I also don't handle licensing or purchasing for anybody. So I don't see publicly, I don't see what the pricing looks like and how it may have changed over time. So if that's the case and you're like, I need a different solution, then yeah, I mean, there's other solutions out there. I don't know them very well, so I can't speak to how they compare to Vault, but they certainly exist. And maybe it makes sense for you. Maybe. Good questions though. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, man. So we were rocking and rolling through Vault's architecture before we got sidelined on a little licensing tangent there. But that was good. I'm glad we covered that. It's not on the exam, but it's good to know. So I mentioned the Vault architecture fundamentals, and that has to do with how it secures your information through the use of encryption keys that are managed by Vault. Objective 8 is all about the Vault deployment architecture. And so this is the actual architecture of the Vault servers, how you combine them together to form Vault clusters, what the cluster communication looks like, and then how do you perform replication between clusters to support both performance modes and DR modes. The replication specifically is an enterprise-only feature. So they just want you to be aware of it, but you're not actually going to be able to run it because you'll need a trial enterprise license, which you can get by contacting sales. But who wants to contact sales? Not this guy. I don't want to do that just to try something out. So replication, they just want you to know about. You don't necessarily have to have ever set it up yourself. Just it's an awareness thing. And then how to manage different portions of it. Like how do you set up storage for Vault? How do you set up the clustering? How does it handle client requests? If you need to put a load balancer in front of Vault, like what are some good to know things in terms of putting a load balancer in front of it? That's all handled through Objective 8. And then the very last objective is how do clients access Vault? There's two kinds of clients. There's humans like you and me. I'm a human, not a robot for sure. Um, how do humans access Vault? They're typically going to use the CLI or the UI. So that's not really what this is focused on. This is focused on how applications are going to access Vault because their process is going to be a little bit different. And there's a few options there they just want you to be aware of. There are SDKs for Vault for most of the major programming languages. So there's one for Python called HVAC, HVAC, which doesn't make me think of Vault, but that's what it's called. The one for Go is just called Go Vault, I think, or Vault Go. It's one of the two. There's like a library for C#. There's a module for Ansible. So like all of those things have a way to integrate with Vault pretty seamlessly. But that requires you to actually rewrite your application specifically to use Vault. And if you're like Empty Mug out there and you're like, I might switch off of Vault at some point, maybe you don't want to rewrite your application specifically for this solution. So how can I bridge that gap where my application currently typically finds secrets either by accessing a file that has secret information in it, or maybe it looks for certain environment variables that have secret data in it. If that's the way it's working today, how do I bridge the gap so I can move that information into Vault, but still put it where my application expects it? And that's what Vault Agent does. So Vault Agent is a mode that Vault can run on any of these application endpoints. And it does all the work of talking to Vault, authenticating, authorizing, grabbing the secrets data. But then it can either populate environment variables or it can populate file locations with that information. So your application can just be like, oh, yeah, there's the information I need. I'm done. I'll run like I normally do. And agents running in the background, just making sure to maintain the leases on your dynamic secrets and your tokens and your authentication. That. So that's one option if you're running traditional applications on a VM or something. The other option is the Vault Secrets operator, which is specifically for Kubernetes. So if you're running your applications in Kubernetes and today they are accessing secrets information through like just native Kubernetes secrets, how can you get Vault in on the action? That's what the secrets operator does. It essentially synchronizes secrets from Vault to Kubernetes. So your applications can still just grab that secret information the way that they already are through the native Kubernetes secrets, but the operator's handling the actual synchronization and provisioning of those secrets in the background. So there's some work for an operator to do to actually set all of that up ahead of time. But once it's set up and configured, then there's not much that the application developer needs to do. They just say, all right, I'll go look for the secret. That's where I get my information. So those are the 9 objectives for the Vault Associate exam. Like I said, the actual exam is only an hour long. It's all multiple choice. There's no practical component. So you just have to understand this information and maybe get some hands-on time with Vault to help drill it in a little bit better. The exam itself is $70.50, which is like a weird amount, but it's also not a very expensive amount. So if you are thinking about sitting the Vault Associate exam, I don't think it's not super difficult. Might be worthwhile looking into. Maybe we should do some demos. Let me show you what the Vault dev server looks like. We talk about the binary a little bit. And again, if you're just joining, you have any questions regarding HashiCorp Vault at all, let me know. I'm keeping an eye on the comments, so I will be happy to respond to whatever questions you might have. Let me share out my screen again. And this time, let me bring up a little VS Code. Hopefully that's big enough for everyone. Hey, I write all of my scripts for my Pluralsight courses in Markdown. That's a little glimpse behind the scenes. I have every single course that I wrote for this thing, which you might notice lines up to all the objectives. And each course has scripts for all the modules, and I write them in Markdown first. And then I also write all the exercises in here, so it's all in one convenient place. And before you ask and know, this repository is not public for what I hope are obvious reasons. But yeah, so if you want to try out Vault, if you've never used it before, you just want to get a feel for things. You have to get the binary first. The binary is written in Go and compiled for like every operating system ever. I mean, that's a bit of an overreach, but like there's a Vault binary for Mac, Windows, and Linux. There's binaries for ARM and x86. There's ones for Solaris and BSD. There's even ones now for like the IBM mainframe, I forget what their Linux is called. Anyway, at this point, if you have any kind of relatively modern operating system, there's a Vault binary for it. And then it's just Vault. What version am I running right now? I don't even know. 1.17. I think the current is 1.19. The exam is based off of 1.16. So it's not going to have any features or questions about things that were released in 1.17 and newer. It's all going to be 1.16 and older. If you want to take Vault for a test drive, you can do Vault server because you want to run it in server mode. And then you add -dev and hit enter, and boom. Vault is now running. By default, Vault listens on port 8200. And so if I want to interact with Vault, I just have to set an environment variable. So let me pull up a second thing here. I have to set an environment variable that tells the Vault binary what's the address of the Vault server that you want to send commands to. And then I could ask it things like, hey, what's the status of the server right now? And it's up and running. In addition to spinning up the Vault server in a dev mode, it also exposes the UI. So if I want to interact with the UI, let me pull that up. I can just go to 127.0.0.1 port 8200, and it will prompt me for a token. That token is included in the output called the root token. So I can just grab that from the output of spinning it up, and hey, there we go. I'm now in the UI of Vault, so I can look around in here, and I can enable secrets engines, authentication methods. I can create policies. I can do all that stuff from the UI, or I can test out all that stuff from the CLI if I would prefer to as well. Maybe let's mount a secrets engine. Let's see what that looks like. Go to secrets engine, and when you spin up the dev instance, it automatically mounts a secrets engine for you, so you have something to interact with. But I'm going to enable an engine on my own, going rogue. So these secrets engines are built into the Vault binary. They're still technically plugins, but they're bundled in with the binary. You can add additional plugins that come from partners in the community if you want, but these are the ones that it has out of the box. Let's pick KV. So KV is the key value secrets engine. And I'm going to do version 2 of the secrets engine because I prefer that one. And I can set a path for it. So it defaults to the engine name, but I'm going to call this one super secret and enable it. You can enable multiple instances of the same type of secrets engine. So right now I've got 2 key value secrets engines enabled, one at the path secret and one at the path super secret. On the back end, Vault completely separates the storage of these 2 secrets engines. So if something has access to one, that doesn't imply any access to the other. Oh, I have been told I need a newer version of Vault because the UI is much better. Is it? I'm on 1.17. I don't know that did it change drastically in 1.19? Like, I guess we could pull the latest version of Vault and find out. I was staying on 1.17 when I was doing all the courses, so I'd be on the same consistent version the entire time. But hey, man, we could, when I'm done this little tour of the secrets engine, we can pull down a newer version and see if the UI looks better, because I honestly don't know. It's interesting. I didn't know that it had changed that much. All right, so let's go in and let's create a secret in our super secrets engine. We're going to create a secret, And I'm going to call this one favorite food. And I'm going to add tacos. And the path for this secret is going to be foods Ned likes. And if I could spell, that would be great. Save. Okay, I've now saved that secret. What do you say? MPT drastic. All right. Oh, I'm definitely going to check that out. Okay. So I've created this secret. I can now look at it here just by clicking on that. I can copy it. I can also go back to the CLI if I want to. And from here, I can try to access that secret. So first, let me get a list of the secrets engines that are enabled. I'll do Vault Secrets List. These are all my currently mounted secrets engines. And if I want to get that specific secret, I can say Vault KV Get. And I'm going to have to try to remember the path I used. Foods Ned likes. So I called it Super Secret Food Foods Ned Food Ned likes. I should have made that shorter. Foods Ned likes. Okay. There we go. Okay. Should have made that so long. So I get back the data that's stored there. So I can do that through the CLI. I can also use the Vault API to get the same information. That's just interacting with the secrets engine very basically. And you can do all this by spinning up the dev server. When you're done with the dev server, all you have to do is hit Control-C and everything is wiped. It stores all the information in memory. So once you kill the process, then that instance of the Vault server is gone. I can spin up another one by running the same command again, but this is actually going to be a brand new instance. If I go back to here and refresh my view, I'll have to sign in with the new token. And that secrets engine and the secret that we mounted before are gone because everything was just stored in memory. So that's important to note about the dev instance of the server is it's really just there to test out functionality and see how things work. It is definitely not there to persistently store your data because it's all stored in memory. You can certainly spin up Vault with persistent data, but you have to do a little more work for that. You actually have to create a Vault server configuration to do that. If anybody's just joining, we've got about another 10 minutes left on the live stream. If you have any questions about HashiCorp Vault at all, you want me to walk through an example or something, just let me know. I'm going to continue kind of walking through things. I want to see what the new interface looks like, so I might try to get the latest version of the binary. If I could remember what I used to install Vault. I think I used winget, upgrade Vault. Did I use winget for this? I'm going to be the first to admit I don't actually remember. Winget, search, Vault. Oh yeah, HashiCorp.vault. Winget install. All right, well, let's see. Let me kill the current dev server that's running. All right, it says successfully installed. Let's make sure it actually did successfully install. Now it's saying 1.17 still, so maybe I used Chocolatey to install it. Hard to say. Pull up a terminal instead. Vault version. No, I'm still on 1.17. All right. Mostly for license version client count. Oh, okay. So that's interesting that a lot of the changes for the UI were around the enterprise version of Vault, which that's not terribly surprising. There's some additional requirements for enterprise that might not be necessary to see for the community edition. So we just ran through mounting a secrets engine. We could do something with authentication methods. Anybody wants to see that? I think I've got some examples in here. What's this one? That's app roll. What's this one? Authenticate with role ID and secret ID. Okay. What's this one? This is all about tokens. User pass. We can do that. So let me start up the Vault server again. Okay, that started up. So authentication methods are how Vault verifies your identity. And so what that requires is usually you would connect to an external service like Okta or Active Directory or one of the cloud provider identity providers and say, hey, Vault, I trust this identity provider to authenticate someone. It also has a couple internal ones, and one's called User Pass, which is just a basic user pass, username and password identities within Vault server. So it doesn't require an external method. It's good for testing because then you don't actually have to hook it into something external. Right now, we don't have it. We only have the token authentication method enabled. That's it. So let's enable Vault Auth enable. We'll enable User Pass. Hey, I created this thing. Now let's add a user to it, and we'll do that through Vault Write and auth user pass users Arthur with a password of Dent. So now I have created a user named Arthur Dent. Shout out if you know what that is from. I expect at least one of you does. And then I might want to authenticate with this person. So the way I would do that from the UI is to use Vault Login and specify the user pass method and my username of Arthur. I'll get prompted for the password, sign in. Now I'm signed in as Arthur instead of as the root token. And so I don't actually have much in the way of access. I get the default token policy because everyone gets the default policy unless you explicitly say they don't get the default policy. The default policy doesn't have a whole lot of rights. It really just gives you the ability to manage your own token and login. So I can look up the properties of my current token. I can say Vault token lookup and get the current properties of the token that I'm signed in with. But if I tried to access a secret, I would get an access denied because I don't actually have a policy that grants me access to that secret. But I can look up my current token. I can ask to renew that token for a certain period if I have space to renew it. And I can also revoke my own token, which in effect signs me out. So I can do Vault token. I want to say it's revoke with -self. Now I'm not actually logged into Vault anymore. So if I tried to access something about Vault, it should fail. Well, status is a public endpoint. But if I tried to get like a list, Vault auth list, I would get an access denied if I tried to enumerate the authentication methods because I now have no valid token to interact with Vault. So that's authentication methods and kind of briefly how they work. The way that you actually authenticate with any given authentication method is going to be dependent on that method. So if this was LDAP, I would want to provide my LDAP credentials. If this was Okta, I would want to provide my Okta credentials. When you go to sign in, it will do the handoff to that service, go through the authentication process, and then pass back to Vault where it will complete it. And it also supports generic things like OIDC and JSON Web Tokens. So you can have those enabled as your authentication methods as well, if you need something more generic that's not specific to a service. Right. So that's a little bit about authentication methods and secrets engines. I think I want to close things out unless anybody has questions. feel free, throw some questions in the chat. But the last thing that I wanted to mention is the other certification, which is Vault Operator Cert. Vault Operations Professional. So Vault Operations Professional, where's the exam content? Vault Operations Professional is the second level of the exam. The associate is multiple choice only, and you're just supposed to have a base level knowledge of Vault, and maybe some hands-on experience with the dev server and trying some stuff out. Vault Operations Professional is intended for someone who's actually used Vault actively in an operations role for several months. So you want to prove that out. The actual exam is a lab-based exam. So you will actually be given tasks to complete, and then you'll have to complete those tasks. And some of the content is under the enterprise umbrella. So this probably assumes that you have access to an enterprise instance of Vault. You can get a temporary enterprise license if you want to try it yourself, but the assumption is you have access to the enterprise level, so you can actually go through some of these, go through some of the tutorials and get the experience with them. So the objectives here are really about operating Vault, managing Vault on a day-to-day basis. So like one is create a working Vault server configuration given a scenario. So they're going to give you a scenario and they want you to build a working Vault server configuration and spin up Vault server using that configuration to support the scenario. So that's a lot they want you to do. Another one is monitoring a Vault environment. This is understanding how Vault emanates telemetry from its configuration, and also how to set up audit devices and logs for Vault. Objective 3 is employ the Vault security model. This one is really around policies and enabling different policies to restrict access by clients. Number 4 has to do with Vault clustering and Vault replication. So Vault clustering is not an enterprise feature. You can set up a Vault cluster using the community edition. That's fine. But if you want to enable replication, whether that's disaster recovery or performance replication, that is something you'll need an enterprise license for. So you should be familiar with how to set that up and verify that it's set up properly. You should understand HSM integration. Just understand how it works, because you may not have an HSM available to you, so they don't require that you have actually set it up yourself. Scaling Vault for performance gets into the performance replication of things, and another enterprise feature, which is performance standby nodes. So you have to understand how those function. There's some more access control stuff, which also brings in some advanced features of Vault Enterprise around Sentinel policies and enterprise namespaces, which is a way to kind of almost run a multi-tenant version of Vault. And then the last one is Vault Agent. So the associate level exam just wants you to be aware of Vault Agent, but not necessarily be able to set up Vault Agent to run. The operations exam wants you to be able to successfully be able to set up and configure the Vault Agent. So a little bit different there. Like I said, this exam is much more robust. It's lab-based. It is more expensive. I think it's like it's less than $300, but it's close to $300. It does come with a free retry. So if you fail it the first time, you can take it again. So I guess you could think of it as like 2 exams for $150 if you plan on failing the first time. It's tough. I've taken it twice. Once when it was in beta, and then I had to renew a few months ago. And it is challenging. So, you definitely, if you're thinking about taking the operator level of the exam, I would recommend spending a lot of time in labs, making sure you understand how to do all of the things that they're asking you to do. Because it's a live lab, the one nice thing is if they ask you to do something or accomplish something, you can check and see if it actually worked. Because you can just run the commands for the thing. If they say set up a policy that allows this and doesn't allow that, you can set up the policy and then test the commands and see if the thing that's not supposed to be allowed is not allowed. You're like, yeah, I did it. Yay, good for me. All right. Well, that is going to do it, I think, for the Vault Ask Me Anything. Hopefully, some folks signed on and got some interesting information when it comes to HashiCorp Vault. If you think I should do this again, let me know. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, Ned in the Cloud, and fill out the contact form there. You can find me on Blue Sky if you want. It's ned@nedinthecloud.com, or leave a comment in this video and let me know if there's something you want me to do again with some more targeted examples or a specific area to focus on. And maybe I'll do like a half-hour one where I'm just focused on a specific area of Vault. That could be fun to do on like a Friday. So let me know about that. Otherwise, thank you everybody who tuned in and watched this Ask Me Anything. I appreciate it. And I'll see y'all on the big bad internet. Bye.